Good morning, everyone. This is Craig Gerlach, Superintendent of Schools. Joining me this morning is Corey Hirschbrunner, Connie Nygaard, and Brian Casey. Brian will be moderating the questions, and I can see that a number of people are already putting the number or questions on chat. Corey is going to then go through a slide deck presentation, and then we're going to do Q&A. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your tremendous work over, I believe, the last 9 weeks of school. I know it's been quite a challenge diving into something that's still very, very new to us. We have experienced. I didn't look at the owl. I'm sorry. Sarah O'Donnell came in and said I'm supposed to look at the owl. That's a little bit different. So. Good morning again. When I toured around the buildings prior to school starting, a significant concern that I've heard from staff prior to students arriving was the issue of both teaching face-to-face as well as the virtual component, the flex e-learning. And of course, we're finding out that is an issue and it continues to be a problem. So as we stated many times throughout this planning process beginning in June, actually going back probably to March, that we need to be patient and we need to be flexible. And that's what we're doing right now is trying to continue to be patient, but flexible in terms of what our learning model looks like. So we are going to pivot. We had a presentation, many of you viewed the board meeting on Monday. We are going to present that again this morning and go over the changes as it relates to the learning model, specifically as it relates to the e-learning component, recognizing that it is a considerable challenge and quite frankly a drain on staff. Currently, we are at a 79% fill rate, which means we have between teachers and teaching assistants, we have 21% of our positions each and every day that go vacant. And so we're scrambling to address the staffing issue. We knew coming into this that our biggest concern likely would be substitute teachers, and that certainly is the case today. So we want to spend the majority of our time answering questions today. So again, put your questions in the chat. Brian's going to oversee that. And when we get to that component, he will be asking those questions. And hopefully the next hour, you'll leave with a better comfort level in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to turn this over to Corey.
Okay, I'm going to quickly go through the presentation that we provided to the board on Monday evening. Some of you have seen the presentation, others have not. So we'll go through it quickly because I think our time today is going to be better spent answering specific questions as it relates to the presentation. So as we had indicated, we've been monitoring our operations plan since the start of the year. And we're at a point where we feel like we need to make some adjustments to that plan. Staff have done an incredible job with safety protocols. Staff have done an incredible job trying to instruct kids. Families have done a phenomenal job of making sure that they're also following guidelines from the county and from the district. However, what's been very prevalent through the last 8 to 9 weeks is that it's too much for staff to do both in-person learning as well as e-learning of students that might be quarantined or e-learning for students that may be on the flexible e-learning where families decide by quarter how they want to receive instruction. So at the core of this work since March has been safety for staff and students, flexibility, as well as a focus on high quality instruction for students. Operations, like I said, we've been monitoring this closely. People are doing a great job. We had no idea how long we would be able to keep this phase of our model in place. And we feel like we're doing a very good job. We're monitoring the county, we're monitoring the state. As you all know, numbers are going up. but they're a lot higher in those two areas than they are within the district, which says we're doing a good job there. So our COVID-19 trends, like Craig had mentioned, we're at a 79% fill rate. That continues to go down weekly, so we're concerned about that. As you know, we had to close Roosevelt School, and it was due to a small outbreak as well as staff capacity. We monitored throughout the weekend, and we just did not have enough staff and subs, to keep the building open. We also know that we've got coming up in the next few months is the cold and flu season. So what impact will that have on our sub capacity during the cold and flu season? And we also know that it's a time when families get together more, they travel more. We're seeing a lot of COVID fatigue, and people are saying, we're going to go on vacation. So we need to anticipate what that may do to our numbers here in the district. So our current instructional model, right now, pre-K through 6th grade, we've got about 80% of our students that are in person and 17% that are doing the flexible e-learning. At the secondary level, we've got in person at about 78%, and we have about 20% in the flexible. And then we've got about 2.5% in the online learning center, kindergarten through 12th grade. Now, pre-K, I just want to talk about just a little bit. Pre-K means anything from our 3-year-old programming, our special ed programming in those early years, as well as 4K programming. So most of what you're going to see today pertains to pre-K. However, it's a little bit different because we've got community partners that we deal with. So we need to be in collaboration with those community partners. But I'll try to explain the pre-K as we go about the next few slides. So what's working really well? We've had 8 weeks of instruction and the in-person learning and the blended model. And what we've learned is that our student achievement is the highest for those people that are with us in person and in the online learning center. We've had 79% of our students return in person, so that's the majority, which is good. And we firmly believe that most students learn best when they're in a face-to-face environment. What's not going so well is that our capacity of staff, we're concerned about. It's been a lot to manage the flexible as well as the in-person learning, so we feel like we need to really address that. We also have learned through data, we've run grade reports, that our students that are in the flexible e-learning are struggling the most, and we need to address that. And we've heard from staff, we've got kids that just aren't engaging. How do we get students to engage? When they are engaging, it's not working for them. Virtual learning is tough. It's tough for staff and it's tough for kids. You have to be very self-motivated if you're a student in that environment. And some students are and are doing very well, but the majority just aren't. We also know that this is draining on our resources. Our budget is taking a hit. Our staff, is our most valuable resource, and it's taking a toll on them. And we feel like we need to address that sooner rather than later, because we don't want staff that are burned out. We don't want staff getting sick and ill. We want them to be at the top of their game to service our students. So the flexible e-learning, the existing structure, is not sustainable. How are we going to address this? This is what we're proposing. We are proposing pre-K through 6 that we find dedicated staff that are currently on staff to help with the flexible e-learning students, so that we've got some staff that are instructing the in-person students, and we've got other staff pre-K 6 that are taking care of the flexible e-learning. What we're anticipating for kindergarten through 6th grade is that we will have a grade level teacher, an educational assistant, and a floating sub as a core group of individuals that would take care of one grade level, district-wide. For pre-K, What we're anticipating is that we will have a designated person that will be creating all of the flexible e-learning lessons and sharing those with all of those 4K staff across the district. How do we intend to do this? We intend to collapse a grade level district-wide. And how we will do that is we'll take a peek at what is the enrollment of students in person and flexible, and what is our staff capacity at those grade levels, and make a determination as to which grade levels and which buildings it's going to be best to collapse that section. We are also proposing that from November 30th until December 23rd, we do e-learning for all students during that time. The reason we did that is because we don't know how long staff can hold on doing both models. So we want them to focus on one instructional model for those 3 weeks to help with their capacity. We will identify the sections in the staff. We'll work to inform staff and students and families. And then what we will do is we will return back to into this new proposed model. Coming back right now, we're talking about 5 days a week. And the reason we're talking about that is because if we've got designated staff for in-person and flex, we shouldn't need that Wednesday time. However, we've received some feedback from staff, and we're still having some conversation about should we come back 5 days or shouldn't we? What are the numbers like in the county? Our goal is always to bring kids back to school if it's safe to do so. So that's continuing to be looked at. The rationale for pre-K 6 is really focused on safety. We don't want to have some short-term notices to close our schools down. And we feel like having a good plan for the remainder of the year will help us to eliminate that. We also want to provide flexibility and we want to work with our community partners because that 3 weeks where we're all e-learning, we know that some families are going to struggle. And we want to work with our community partners. We want to work with Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA to create some homework centers. This model will also allow for teachers that are in person to focus on in person for the majority of the time, and it will also allow flexible teachers to focus on flexible. And it will take the flexible off the majority of our teachers and the possibility to return to a 5-day per week if it's deemed necessary to do that. What would we do for grades 7 through 12? We would do flexible e-learners would return to the blended model. And at secondary, the blended model is the cohort model. So if you have a last name of A through L, you attend in person Monday and Tuesday, and you're in an e-learning environment Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you have a last name of M to Z, you are in person Thursday, Friday, and in e-learning Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So we would ask those flexible e-learners to return to that cohort model or apply to the online learning center if that meets their family's needs. We would do something similar in grades 7 through 12. We would take that 3 weeks, November 30th to December 23rd, and everyone would do e-learning. We would work on informing our students and families. We would complete the application process for the online learning center, and then we would resume to the blended model or the OLC second semester. Different from elementary, elementary is going to transition to the new plan starting January 4th. Secondary, they would return to the current model that we're in January 4th through the end of the first semester, and then they would start the new proposed model starting January 25th, which is the start of the second semester. Similar rationale for grades 7 through 12, safety, flexibility, and instruction. We feel like we're at a point where there's just a natural progression to make the shift and adjustment based on what we're hearing from staff, what we're hearing from a lot of students, and what we're hearing from families. We know that with any plan, it's never perfect, and there's going to be some things that we need to consider and continuing to monitor throughout the next few weeks. We're hoping that there's going to be benefits. We're hoping that the benefits and teacher workload will improve. We're hoping that we're able to maximize engagement, growth opportunities, and student achievement opportunities for students. We're hoping that this responds to the climate and culture issue that we have in the buildings right now. Teachers are just not having a lot of time to do everything that's been put on their plate to do. So we're hoping that this new tweak will help with that. We're trying to be proactive. We're trying to be proactive with the months to come with cold and flu, as well as any potential short-term closures that might come our way. This would also allow us to do more synchronous lessons with students, which we know kids have asked for, and we know that families have asked for, and staff want to have time to do. So this, we're hoping will fix that issue. We know that there's going to be some concerns that we need to keep in mind. That is, what is our support staff going to do? We want to keep people employed. We want to keep people paid. So we need to work out those specifics and logistics for that 3 weeks in November and December, as well as in the flexible model and in-person model. That also goes, for food service staff, for EAs, transportation department, custodial staff, secretarial staff. Those logistics will be worked out. This will place burden on families for 3 weeks. We're going to continue to work with our community partners to address that need. It's going to raise a lot of questions about students that have IEPs or 504s. How are we going to meet those needs? Again, we'll work those logistics out and we'll do our best. We're obligated to meet student needs the very best we can, and we'll work with case managers to do that. This will also potentially will lose some student engagement. We know that we might lose some engagement during that 3 weeks, but we also know that staff focusing on one instructional model will be able to focus on that just a little bit more. There's definitely a financial impact to our budget. We're going to continue to monitor that, and we feel this is going to help staff, but we never know until we give it a try. So we'll need to continue to monitor that resiliency of staff. In closing, what will this schedule adjustment look like? So between now and November 25th, we're going to maintain our current instructional model. We're going to work on communication with families and staff and students, and we're going to really start to hammer in on that application process at the Online Learning Center and what that looks like. From November 30th to the 23rd of December, we're going to shift to that all students will be in an online environment. We're going to work on collapsing our sections and classrooms. We'll look for volunteers first. If we don't get enough volunteers, but we're hopeful that we will ask people and we will reassign staff to that flexible model. We're going to work on the homework centers with our community partners. And during the time of that 3 weeks, we will ask that all staff work from the building to do that e-learning unless there is an extenuating circumstance. And in that case, then we're asking that you communicate with your building principal or the Human Resources Department. January 4th for pre-K 6, we're going to make that shift to the new model. So pre-K, again, you are following the same schedule of November 30th to December 23rd. You will be in flexible, but starting January 4th, we would shift to this new model. And then students that are electing to remain in the flexible environment, they will do so for the remainder of the year. We are not going to allow families to come in and out like we have. January 4th for 7th through 12th grade, they will return in our current right now model, which is the blended model with the cohorts. They will also finish the semester in that model, and then starting on January 25th is when students at the secondary level would return all students to that 2 days a week cohort model or apply to the online learning center. With that, I feel like we've got about 35 minutes or more to really address any questions or concerns that staff may have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who's going to moderate, and we'll answer questions as we can.
Just a few comments before we begin. It looks like we have about 40 minutes. We will do our best to
Hang on, sorry.
we're going to do our best to answer all the questions.
Sorry.
Okay,
Trying to get the questions up here.
just turn off your volume. Okay, we're going to do our best to try and answer the questions. They're coming in the chat. We had some questions that were collected previously through different avenues. I'm going to be doing this on the fly. I may paraphrase questions. I may skip over some questions. They'll all be collected and documented. And if we don't answer your question, someone will do their best to try and answer it for you. Starting off, I'm going to start with a question that was pre-submitted. Connie, can you talk a little bit about, the shift to this new model and what we're doing with the flexi learners? The goal with the original model was they could take their SPASH schedule, they'd have electives, all those other special classes. But now with the OLC, they lose some of that, and it's just OLC or our blended model.
Yes, so we started the year really giving families tremendous choice in what they felt comfortable with for instruction for the kids. So we had about 2% of our secondary students and families that chose the online learning center for the entire year. So those families felt that coming back to the school was not an option in the buildings. And so we asked them to enroll in the online learning center. The flexible e-learners, as Brian mentioned, are those secondary students who wanted their schedule at PODS or then PJ, CFC or SPASH, maintaining their current classes and with their teachers. As was mentioned in Corey's presentation, the capacity for our teachers to do the in-person classes along with the flexible has just become too much, and we've been concerned about the engagement for our flexible learners. So we're going to ask people to make that choice that semester to do either the in-person blended or the online learning center. For some students who want to apply to the online learning center, your schedule may not look the same. We're going to do everything we can. We have currently 17 district teachers that teach online classes in addition to their normal teaching load. We're going to continue to recruit teachers to take on some additional classes with the online learning center. So we will do our very best to maintain what a schedule looked like first semester. Can't guarantee that, although the number of offerings in our online learning center is pretty impressive. So that program has been in operation for 10 years. Dana Breed has been the coordinator for 10 years and does an amazing job accommodating students. So we're going to do our absolute best to make sure our schedule looks similar to what it did for semester.
Okay, thanks. Next question, we have a multitude of questions involving quarantine. So we move into the new model, and then elementary teachers are teaching 5 days a week. What happens when there's students who are quarantined for 2 weeks or more? How do we address their educational needs, and who addresses it?
Yeah, that's a question that we need to continue to work out the logistics. Initially, what we were thinking is, staff, it's hard to give up students to someone else. Staff want to help students the very best that they can. So, initially we were thinking that if you're an in-person teacher and you have an in-person student that needs to quarantine because they're identified as a close contact, that teacher would create the e-learning lessons for that student. However, what I'm hearing from staff is that's not really helping the problem, because they feel like if they have to continue to create those e-learning lessons, that's really not addressing the issue. But the reason why we went that direction initially was because we know that when students flip back and forth between two different teachers or more, it gets difficult for them and it gets difficult for teachers. And there's not a guarantee, just like there is in a school with 3 sections of second grade, that everybody's going to be at the same place at the same time. So if you have a student that quarantines and shifts to the e-learning cohort of 3, they may be at a very different place than where their classroom teacher was. So we're going to continue to work that out. We're going to continue to see what's best for students and what's best for staff. But I hear what you're saying, that it may not be addressing the need if the in-person teacher has to do that. So more to come. We'll work on that.
Next question involves support staff. What are EAs, bus drivers, and food service doing during the e-learning weeks, and will they get paid?
Yes, they'll be paid. We likely will have some staff reassignments. Some of our EAs might be utilized within the classroom assisting teachers. Some of our EAs might be working with the Boys and Girls Club and or the YMCA with a homework club, if I may. We may have transportation bus drivers doing the same in terms of assisting with supervision of homework club. We will be offering grab and go meals, very similar to the summer. So we'll have transportation drivers, again, bus drivers assisting with delivery of emails. But the long and short of it, yes, they will be paid. And, let's call a spade a spade. Will everybody be as busy as they are right now in terms of support staff? Likely not. This is a decision that's being made by the school district. Quite frankly, with the assistance of cabinet, a decision made by me in terms of going to e-learning. And so we will continue to support paying our support staff. That, however, might not be the case in the event we shut down from the state level. And I'm not hearing that we're going to, but if you take a look at the cases that we're starting to accumulate in Wisconsin, I would be surprised after the presidential election if something does happen. But as long as we're continuing to close down because of our decision, we will continue to pay all of our support staff.
Great.
And in saying that, we're going to ask that people be flexible. We have to, you might be doing something different. The key is to keep people employed and keep people receiving paychecks. But it might mean you might be doing something different.
I got a question for Connie and Corey regarding report cards. So the e-learners come back in, or maybe we'll have some that leave the OLC option. Who's responsible for doing their grades and report cards that will be coming up at the end of the semester?
I'll start with elementary and then I'll let Connie chime in. That's a really good question again. We're going to have discussions as to what this means for the elementary report card, because if we make the shift on January 4th, do we just move the end of second quarter up 3 weeks, knowing that we're not going to be able to grade everything on that report card, and then have the current teacher provide as many grades as we can? Or do we do the grades at the end of the semester and have both teachers do them? I don't know what the best answer is at this point. Again, it's one of those things that we're going to have to work through. But we'll get there. I mean, I think we're going to have to be flexible. There's soon going to be information coming out about just how to even fill out the report card for the first quarter in this new environment, with some kids in an online learning center, some kids in flexible, and the others in person, and only 4 days a week. So the report card issue is going to continue to be an issue throughout the year, and we'll problem solve through that together.
At the secondary level, all teachers have their similar students in the e-learning environment for those 3 weeks. And then when we come back, we return into that blended, flexible model. So all of our secondary teachers will complete report cards for their students as they did at semester. Online Learning Center students receive grades from the Online Learning Center teachers. And then as we move into the second semester, we just have those two models. So on the Learning Center, teachers grade students, and then our second semester blended teachers would have their students, and they would be grading them as well.
Great. Question for Connie and Corey again, regarding the equity of prep time. The secondary moves into the model where they still have Wednesdays as a e-learning day and a planning/collaboration day. The elementary K-6 staff would be teaching 5 days a week. Can you explain the thinking behind that and why that decision was made?
So again, we're still working on that as well, but the thinking behind it was at the secondary level, if they're in the cohort model, if they have students in person Monday, Tuesday, they also have that second half of the alphabet where they're providing that e-learning lesson at that same time. So they would need that Wednesday. Elementary, I am not saying that you don't have you just as much work on your plate or don't have as much planning to do with little or no prep time, but the original thought was if we've got designated staff for just those two things, then we would not need the Wednesdays, which was implemented with the intent of if a teacher is doing both in person and flexible, that they would need that Wednesday to help plan and prepare for both. And if we took that away, then we could essentially bring back the Wednesday. But again, we're hearing what staff are saying. We're going to continue to address that. I feel like it's worth saying that, it might have felt like a really quick shift to finding a solution, which yes, in fact it was, because we heard that people are burning out. They don't have many more days that they can continue doing this. So we felt like we needed to make this shift quickly and then figure out some of these logistical things once we were able to get in front of the board, give parents enough time to start working out childcare issues, give staff enough time to kind of wrap their head around where we think we need to go for the year. But we know that there's still a lot of things that we're going to have to problem solve together.
Let's not get into comparing primary, elementary, and secondary. I'm not convinced that elementary teachers want to teach in the high school. I don't convince the high school teachers want to teach in the elementary. My entire career, I've been hearing comparisons between the two. The issue is we can't put 1,500 kids in SPASH. If we could, we'd be going 5 days a week. Our goal is to get kids back in school 5 days a week. Because we can't fit 1,500 kids in SPASH doesn't mean we're going to put fewer kids and have less days at the elementary school. We're all here for the purpose of educating children, and the age appropriateness is very different between elementary and high school. It is my goal to get all of our students in our secondary schools back in school 5 days a week by the end of the third quarter. Now, whether or not we'll be successful doing that is yet to be seen, but it's imperative that we get our kids back in school and we finish this school year assuming that we can do it safely with our kids in school to prepare for next year. Because if we don't finish our school year with our kids in school, we're doing all this all over again next summer going into the next school year. And that certainly is not in the best interest of learning.
A couple of questions about working from home. Why was the decision made to have staff work in the buildings, and what would allow staff to work from home?
When we went into a shutdown last spring, it was new to everyone. Nobody was really prepared for that. We want to maintain an educational setting to the extent that we can. That's in a classroom. Teachers and staff have all of their materials, their technology in the buildings. We also have staff in a building whereas they can collaborate. You cannot collaborate when you're at home doing e-learning. We need to maintain an educational environment, and that's much better done in a classroom than it is in one's personal home.
Can you talk about childcare a little bit?
Yes, obviously, we're working with the community as it relates to childcare. That's for real. It is for our own staff. We will make exceptions for those that have childcare issues. We will also be opening up or providing for some childcare assistance within our own facilities for those that need to have childcare, but we will make exceptions for those that will have that request. We certainly want to be reasonable here. We understand that it's very difficult to do what you're doing. And when you have your own children at home, it makes it that much more challenging. We get that. We're going to work it.
There's quite a few comments and questions related to input from teachers. I'm glad to see some teachers actually are very appreciative for the work that we've done. And I can say, I know how tirelessly everyone in this room has worked on this plan to make it happen. There is a perception or feeling from some teachers that their input isn't being heard or valued. Can we talk a little bit about how much we take and how that affects the process?
I've been in buildings prior to school started, and this issue has been brought to my attention on a regular basis. I think we are listening to staff. We receive feedback from our ILs, and they support this. Our ILs oversee instruction as well in each particular building. I feel as if we did, and we continue to get feedback from staff. And quite frankly, the feedback we're getting right now isn't positive. We're getting plenty of emails saying, "What are you doing? This is a bad idea." We think it's maybe it is a bad idea. We don't know. This is all new for all of us. You know, we'll know at the end of the year if this works. I know that if we don't do something, we aren't going to make it to Thanksgiving. We're not going to be able to staff our buildings, and we're all going to be virtual learning. Our staff will be in schools, but we'll all be virtual learning. We have to do something. And again, this is new for all of us. Schools are pivoting throughout the state, and no one's doing it, and everyone's doing something different. Nobody has the answers here. This is a bona fide attempt to meet the needs of separating in-person and our flexible learning. And I commend our staff, our cabinet that's put so much energy into this. And quite frankly, after the last couple of days, I'm going home questioning, should we be doing this? The answer to that is right now, yes. We've got to do something, or we're hanging on by a shoestring right now.
I guess a couple things I'd like to add to that is, you know, there's not a perfect plan right now. We are in survival mode. We're in the middle of a crisis. And whatever we do, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be messy. I feel like we have listened to staff. That's why we're here. I mean, we were hearing that it's too difficult to do both in-person and flexible. So we made a quick shift. I can speak at the elementary level. We pivoted, you know, a recent IL meeting that we were going to talk about power standards, and we shifted to how are we feeling? What are we doing? You know, what changes need to be made? How can we address this? And each grade level, you know, instructional leader group had some ideas and some suggestions, and what was talked about in one grade level might not have been talked about in another grade level. But we took all of that information and created the very best plan that we could with what we had. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Will it need to be adjusted? Absolutely. So we feel like we're responding. I mean, and if we're not responding in the way that you had hoped, we apologize for that, but we can maintain if we need to what we're doing right now. But honestly, I'm more concerned about that than concerned about the new plan and tweak that we've put in place. So we'll continue to listen to staff. We'll continue to make the best decisions we can, but please know we also need your patience and understanding and knowing that not every idea can we implement. We just have to keep student interest, staff interest, and family interest at the forefront. And we're doing the best that we can balancing all three of those things.
Okay. I'm going to synthesize about 3 or 4 detailed questions regarding the synchronous instruction at the secondary level. There's a lot of teachers are wondering, what are the expectations? What are they going to be doing, teaching students full virtual for that 3.5-week period?
Secondary principals are actually meeting this afternoon to look at how we can incorporate synchronous instruction for students. We've heard last spring, and we know from this fall, that's a really important part of student engagement and achievement in an e-learning model. And so working on that, teachers are going to have to look at engaging with kids for each of their periods so that they teach during the day in short chunks. We have to make sure we don't overwhelm students, but we've got to engage students more at the secondary level during this e-learning. We've lost some students, and part of that is that relationship piece that is so incredible for student achievement. We've got to get that back in e-learning. That means requiring some synchronous instruction.
Okay, next question is for Corey. How are you going to choose the teachers that are going to be doing a full e-learning program?
Yep. So we're going to take a look at which schools were able to collapse that grade level. So we'll make that determination first. And then from there, once that's determined, we'll ask the teachers at that grade level if they would be interested in volunteering to be that flex e-learner teacher. I mean, we've already had a couple staff come forward and say they might be interested in that. And if there's enough volunteers, great. If there's not, then we would likely reassign someone at that grade level. The intent is to have minimal distractions for staff and for students. So we wouldn't want there to be a lot of movement of staff within a building or across the district. So we're probably going to just focus on those grade levels where the numbers warrant us to collapse a section without a lot of disruption. I know that a question has been posed multiple times, if you take a teacher and that teacher shifts to flexible, what happens to that teacher's students? Where do they go? Those students would then be picked up by the other teachers in that building at that grade level. And then the next question after that is, are we going to still be able to social distance and meet the safety protocols? We believe, tentatively looking at the numbers, we're still analyzing where kids are planning to go second quarter, but we're thinking we're still going to be able to do that while also following our safety protocols.
Question about Maples. Do we have a plan for Maples instruction for the e-learners?
I think Maples, special ed, ELL, all of those are questions for staff. How does this fit? It would be great if we had enough staff in those areas to designate to do the flexible e-learning at the elementary also. I don't know if that's possible, but again, with those staff and instructional leaders in ELL, in Maples, and special ed, we'll take a peek and we'll try to figure out what is the best way to meet all students' needs with the staff that we have available.
Another great question here. How are we going to handle attendance with students during the virtual? Is it going to be different? Is there going to be more accountability? What are your thoughts on that?
We don't have an answer for that right now. If we require synchronous sections, we have to understand that some students might not be able to engage. They might have other issues that are going on. So we are working on how we are going to calculate attendance during the virtual period at 3-week time.
Okay, my apologies. I'm just trying to shift and find a new question. We have ones that we've already answered.
Can I answer one that I saw in here, Brian? Are you okay with that?
Go ahead.
Some people are asking, why do we shift on January 4th for elementary? Wouldn't it make sense to maybe start a week later or at second semester? In reality, when we started discussing this new plan, the plan was to start with a new change second semester for elementary 2. And after further discussion with individuals, we've worked our way back. So this is kind of where we've landed after multiple conversations about what we feel is best before we lay this plan out there. I'm worried that if we don't start January 4th, that teachers are going to shift for that 3 weeks to just teaching one instructional model. Then they're going to come back again and they're going to have to do both for a short period of time and then shift again. So it's just a lot of movement. I think it's best if we can minimize the transitions for staff and students. And that's where we landed on the January 4th date.
I got a question for secondary and elementary. So with the OLC at the secondary, do we have a cutoff point as to the number that we would accept, or how are we dealing with numbers? Or likewise with the e-learning program for elementary, is there a line in the sand, so to speak, about how many students we could admit to that program or not?
Right now, we're looking at our best guess for capacity on an expansion of the OLC to 200 full-time students. We are going to use an application process, and we know that we are going to have some students that have medical issues or other situations that require them to be placed into the OLC. So that application process will be one where we think we can accommodate about 200 students. We're going to really recruit some of our own secondary teachers to teach some online learning classes that might be specialized for our ELL students, special education students. Those secondary teachers that did an amazing job in an e-learning might very well consider taking on an online learning class second semester if capacity allows. We'd love to have more local teachers in the online learning center. Currently, we have 17 secondary students or secondary teachers that are teaching classes above and beyond their normal teaching load. And we're going to look to ask for even more that are willing to do that, to take on that additional class. And again, those would be those of you secondary teachers that found that you could handle that e-learning component, that flexible e-learning component. We'd love to have you join the online learning center. Our local teachers along with local curriculum is really, really best for kids.
Elementary is a little bit different with the online learning center. We use the Wisconsin e-network, as does secondary, but this is their first year of offering elementary curriculum. So there are no WEN teachers designated for the online learning center. So we have our own designated staff here within the district that are teaching the students in the online learning center at the elementary. We can shift students there, but again, that's going to be a strain on our instructional staff. So if we do that, we'll likely have to add more staff, and that's going to just be a shift from either in-person and flex to the online learning center at this point, unless we hire additional staff. The other piece, like Connie had indicated, is that we truly believe that students are going to do best when they are presented with our curriculum rather than an alternative curriculum. It's good stuff, but I think we're hoping that they eventually come back to us in an in-person environment, and it's going to be easier to do that if they're exposed to our curriculum standards.
Point of clarification, we had 3 or 4 questions about November 23rd and 24th. What exactly are the expectations on those days? Have they changed, or are they the same?
They have not changed, Brian. Those are the exact same. We're still going to use those days for preparation and collaboration for staff and catch-up days for students. Catch-up e-learning students as well as catch-up for in-person students.
A couple questions from staff members that have children. So obviously when we go to a virtual, they're also in the position as parents of possibly doing daycare, or what are we doing to support our staff members that have school-aged children?
We're working with the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, and our community partners to see if we can't find some childcare and homework center type options, satellite locations throughout the district as well as within the community. So we know it's a concern. We're doing our very best. Connie has already been in touch with some of our community partners to get that established. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to address that need. If childcare is still a need, we'll have to work with those individuals with an alternative solution.
We've had several questions as well about the return after the holidays. With the logic being, with holiday gatherings and family gatherings and travel, there is an increased risk of exposure to COVID and that sort of family spread. What's the thinking about returning immediately after New Year's, or would it be wiser to return at a later date?
We just, I can't afford to call off school that long. I'm taking a lot of heat and a lot of pressure right now. There are, quite frankly, a lot of families very upset at me for doing this in the first place. We were originally going to come back at semester time. That would have addressed that issue, and we would have had children out for an additional couple weeks. I'm pushing the envelope right now. I cannot continue to call school off, change our calendar without upsetting people. And yes, I get the whole issue. We've got deer season, get yourself now. There's a lot of gatherings for deer season, and then Thanksgiving, and then there's that time off. We're hoping that families make good decisions over the holidays, and they stay with their close network. But at the end of the day, we have got to get our kids back in school.
Again, we've had multiple questions about the deep cleaning day at the elementaries on Wednesday. When we go back 5 days a week, there wouldn't be that dedicated time for cleaning. What are we going to do to make up for that?
Honestly, I don't know. We're gonna have to figure that out. We're gonna continue to discuss the Wednesday piece. We know that keeping our schools clean and safe is important. So what that looks like, if we are back 5 days a week, we're gonna continue to problem solve that with our maintenance and custodial staff. If we're not back on Wednesdays for whatever reason, or if we need to make an adjustment in a month or 2 months from now, we'll definitely keep cleaning those buildings like we are right now on Wednesdays. So more to come.
If we're back on Wednesdays, it's, we can simply have crews come in at night, do the same thing, and then work the second and third shifts if we have to.
Again, a lot of questions about numbers of students. Do we expect the numbers of students to change a lot, where we have to make adjustments in class sizes or other things, or?
Teresa Benz actually right now is analyzing our numbers. We've surveyed our families that are in flexible e-learning right now. We're going to have those finalized today because we promised buildings they would have that. But the last time I looked, it was less than 15% of our e-learning families that had expressed an interest in coming back to the building. However, there's over 300 that have not responded to that survey. So we're not sure what that means. Does that mean they're going to stay in flex, or does that mean they're coming back to the building? So we've asked our building office staff to start making some phone calls today so we can get some information from those families. So we'll provide that, but as of right now, initially, we're not concerned about that, but if it becomes a concern, we'll address it.
Kind of a detailed question, but I'm sure everyone would like to know this. Are staff going to be allowed to use any personal time from November through December during this e-learning time, personal days off?
We haven't addressed that. That's a good question. Obviously, people have issues, events in their life that certainly are warranted. I guess we'll have to discuss that at cabinet. Obviously, throughout this, when we have a substitute teacher issue, now when you're e-learning and you're on a personal day, we still have that issue, and we know that when we put a sub in our classrooms, the quality of teaching and learning goes down. But I'm not here to say no, we won't, because there are people that actually likely need to have some time. But we will discuss that at greater length and communicate that out.
What about food service? Are we providing meals during the virtual instruction?
Yes, we'll be doing grab and go, very similar to this summer. And likely in some of our buildings, in the event that we have students in some type of supervised homework club, for lack of a better term.
I got one question here I can answer real quick. Are webcams technology available for synchronous classes? Absolutely. We have enough webcams. We gave them out to all teachers. We will have more. We're working on wireless microphones. We're plagued by some delays in shipments. There's worldwide shortages, but I feel confident we can support that if that's what teachers need. We also had a question about reading support. If we're virtual for 3 or 4 weeks, what will we do for all of the reading support specialists that we're going to be supporting students? Is it a pause? Do we change what we're doing? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, we've had some of our reading staff that have done a phenomenal job of doing lessons with students that might need reading intervention virtually. So hopefully we would be able to address that just like we did over the summer and as we've been doing so far this year. We've also purchased some additional resources to help with that. So we definitely wouldn't take a pause. We would hope to continue providing that reading support as students need it and as we're able.
At the secondary level, our reading teachers are still conducting small group reading classes called Readers Workshop. We have a couple of reading teachers that have been providing coaching for teachers and in moving literacy in the content areas. We may be looking at if we have some needs for those reading teachers within the OLC. We may be reassigning for second semester based on the applications that come in and the needs of the kids.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. That's the time that we said we would cut this off. I guess I'd leave it open if you want to continue the discussion. We have way more questions than we can possibly answer in the next 3 minutes, let alone probably 5-10 minutes. I guess I think maybe we'd want to just wrap this up if you want to say anything in conclusion. And then again, thank you to everyone that submitted questions. I apologize if I didn't read your question. There's way more than we could possibly answer, and we'll do our best to get you a response to your question.
So I guess I'll just close with, I appreciate everything that staff has done so far. I truly understand how difficult the situation is for every staff member in this district. I think people have been asked to do more. We've asked to do things that are very different than what we're used to, and it's uncomfortable. So thank you for that. Continue to know that we're going to do the very best we can to address needs as they come our way. We have no idea when and how long this is going to last or what's going to come our direction next. So we have to stick together. We have to support each other. We've got to take care of our social emotional needs of students and of staff. And please, 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 I appreciate your understanding and patience and know that we're trying to do what's very best without any roadmap on how we do it. So we're going to continue to do that and keep on keeping on, everybody. We can get through this together.
Connie?
I think these are really difficult times, and we have to be responsive to our kids. We have to be responsive to staff. We need to be responsive to our families. And sometimes those needs are different. And we're trying to do our absolute best, putting kids first. We're concerned about engagement, student engagement. We're concerned about instruction and safety first and foremost. We've done a great job in the district with safety. Our school cases are low, much lower than what's happening in the community. We've done a great job, but now we're noticing that the instructional model needs some work, and we have to respond to that. So we're going to do our best. Hopefully, you feel like you've been listened to. The secondary principals came to me very quickly saying, our buildings are safe. We're able to social distance. Kids are masking. They're doing a fabulous job, but the instructional model is really hurting staff in terms of sustainability. So we're being responsive to that. But like Corey said, I think we need to really support each other during these difficult times.
We've been discussing this issue at Bliss for a number of weeks. Connie and Corey came to me 3 weeks ago and said, we got to do something. We are not going to be able to sustain this model. So this is an earnest attempt to make a change that we hope is going to be positive. I ask that we focus on on how this can work and how we can problem solve all of the issues that we know are going to come in front of us. If we focus on why this won't work, it's not going to work. So let's take care of each other. Let's support one another. Contact any of us with questions. And we really are trying to do this together. And we can't do it, obviously, without your help. So thank you so much and be safe.